911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing. We can't find her anywhere.
An innocent 11-year-old girl, Carlie, seemed to vanish without a trace while walking home from a friend's house. Her family and loved ones were gripped with a growing sense of fear and helplessness.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
Around 6 o'clock.
Hundreds of officers were trying to do their best to unravel the mystery of her disappearance.
I appreciate you coming down. Need to go through some information with you. Whatever.
As time went on and the case stalled, no one knew where Carlie was or what had happened to her. The investigation had no leads, no evidence, and no suspects.
The search for Carlie Brucia has gone national, with the FBI also providing its resources to find her.
But soon, authorities uncovered a shocking piece of video evidence that would lead to a sinister truth.
The search for a missing Florida girl has kicked into high gear. Since her disappearance on Sunday, the urgency to find 11-year-old Carlie Brucia has mounted with each passing second.
11-year-old Carlie Brucia lived in Florida with her mother, Susan, and her stepfather, Stephen. On holidays, she would travel to New York to spend time with her father. Carlie cherished the warm, welcoming atmosphere at his home, where she was always surrounded by love and attention. Her relatives especially enjoyed watching her open her gifts, and the moments when she unwrapped her presents were the highlight of every gathering. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Carlie's been staying over at her friend Danielle's house for a slumber party, and the plan is to watch the game. But just half an hour before the game started, Carlie suddenly decided to head home. She refused a ride and chose to walk, even though her house was only a mile away from her friends. When Susan found out that her daughter was walking home, she asked Carlie's stepfather, Stephen, to go and pick her up along the way. However, by the time he got there, Carlie was nowhere to be found.
911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing. She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
And when was the last time that she was seen?
It was at 6 o'clock, too. Around 6 o'clock.
When it comes to a missing child, the procedure is clear. Take action immediately. Detectives from Sarasota County Sheriff's Department wasted no time and headed straight to Susan's house to uncover the circumstances of Carlie's disappearance. Susan was overwhelmed with worry, shaking from fear, as she had no clue where her daughter could be. Officers quickly learned that Carlie had been staying at her friend's house, where she often stayed overnight. Her friend mentioned to the police that Carlie hadn't been in a good mood that evening. Apparently, Susan and her stepfather had a big argument again, and Carlie, concerned for her mother, decided to go home as quickly as possible. The police immediately issued a missing child alert for Carlie. Meanwhile, investigators began questioning neighbors and calling all of Carlie's friends. Officers thoroughly searched every corner of the neighborhood and combed through the area, leaving no stone unturned. They also reviewed school records, just in case she showed up the next day. When Carlie didn't arrive at school the following morning, detectives decided to bring in the bloodhounds, hoping that the specially trained dogs might be able to pick up her scent and aid in the search. Using a pillowcase from Carlie's room as a scent guide, the dogs picked up a trail leading west along Bee Ridge Road, the path she would have likely taken home. The bloodhounds led investigators to a car wash, which offered a shorter route to Carlie's home. In this hidden, out-of-sight area, the dogs became confused, circling aimlessly until it became clear to the detective that the trail had gone cold. Once investigators confirmed that Carlie had been walking home using this route, they concluded that she had likely been safe until reaching this point. They then decided to request surveillance footage from nearby businesses, including the car wash, which had several motion-activated cameras covering most of the surrounding area. The investigators began reviewing footage from around 6:20 p.m., around the time Carlie would have passed by the parking lot. However, on the first camera, all they could see were empty spaces and passing vehicles, no sign of Carlie or any pedestrians. Hoping for a better view, they switched to a different camera that showed the lot from another angle. Despite their close examination of the footage, the investigators still didn't spot Carlie anywhere. It was strange because the bloodhounds had clearly indicated that Carlie had turned at that spot. Investigators had one last hope, a motion-activated camera that covered the area behind the car wash. Finally, at 6:20 p.m., the footage revealed something. On the right side of the screen, a girl appeared, walking toward the camera, while a man approached from the left. The girl was wearing a red blouse, just like Carlie, and blue jeans, exactly what she had on that day. Everything pointed to this being Carlie. The footage showed her passing by the man, clearly not intending to engage with him, but the man approached her, grabbed her by the hand, and likely said something to her, perhaps even threatened her. Next, the footage shows the man, still gripping the girl's hand, turning to face the camera as he forcefully leads her away. While the video only partially captured the suspect's features, it was clear enough to identify him as a white male, of average height, stocky build, with thick, dark hair. In cases involving missing children, law enforcement often starts by investigating family motives first. The parents typically became the prime suspects before anyone else, especially if there's any indication they might be involved. In this instance, detectives first brought in Carlie's stepfather, Stephen Kanzler, for questioning. Stephen explained that he had been home that evening with Carlie's mother, Susan.
And Susan says, "Hey, can you go pick up Carlie?" She started walking down Bee Ridge. And I just said, "Where's she at?" And she was Bonnie's. I said, "That's the one over here." And she said, "Yes." "Okay, I'm leaving right now." And out the door I went. "Okay."
He mentioned that while he was driving, he remained in contact with Susan, continuously asking whether Carlie had returned home and where she could have gone if she hadn't.
We went back home and I told Susan, "I can't find her. Where is she?"
Okay. At this point in your mind, what's going on?
I think something's wrong. Because Carlie's not that kind of person. I mean, Carlie goes somewhere, she always calls. And she's just always been like that. She'll use the phone wherever she's at to let us know what's going on.
The detectives reached out to the phone company to verify Stephen's number, which confirmed that he was not connected to Carlie's disappearance. However, during his search for Carlie, Stephen noticed something unusual. He remembered seeing a red pickup truck, specifically a tow truck, driving back and forth on Bee Ridge and even stopping a few times in front of the car wash.
And I said, once he got out to Bee Ridge going east, he started to slow down once he passed me. And then that's where my wife was further down. And he slowed down, looked at her, and then he just kept on going.
The most intriguing turn of events happened when Stephen went back to the home of Carlie's friend, Connie, to double-check everything. He spotted the same red tow truck parked outside. He was convinced it was the very vehicle he had spotted near the car wash. Stephen speculated that the owner of the tow truck likely lived at Connie's house. The detectives looked into this information, and it checked out. Connie's boyfriend, Ron Choquette, actually lived with her and her daughter. The investigators reviewed the surveillance footage that included Ron, focusing specifically on his clothing. He was seen wearing a gray mechanic's jumpsuit with a name badge on the right side, just a standard work uniform typically worn by mechanics and tow truck drivers. As a result, Ron quickly became a person of interest in the case. Since Carlie had stayed overnight at her friend's house, it meant he and Carlie had been in the same residence both the night before and much of the following day, just prior to her disappearance. The connection made Ron the primary suspect. He was requested to come to the precinct to give a statement.
I appreciate you coming down. I need to go through some information with you. Whatever. So run through it with me. Carlie spent the night Saturday?
Yes.
So she spent the night Saturday night onto Sunday.
Right.
Anything?
Sunday morning, I woke up. I don't know, nothing happened Saturday night. You know, they were giddy all night long. You know, I was sleeping in the other room. So I woke up Sunday morning, like I normally do, get up, get ready for work.
So if you didn't see her at any point after...
During the day?
During the day or after you went to work?
Absolutely not.
Is that what you wore to work Sunday or...
No, actually I had a Super Bowl shirt on yesterday, a gray shirt.
How do you drive home?
When the detectives told Ron that his tow truck had been seen on Bee Ridge, he didn't deny it but claimed he was there because he was searching for Carlie. The investigators presented him with photos from the surveillance footage at the car wash. Ron identified the girl as the missing Carlie, but strongly denied being the unknown man in the video. In fact, Choquette urged the detectives to check with his workplace to confirm his whereabouts at 6:20 p.m. His coworkers and boss all verified his account, confirming that Ron was indeed at work during that time. Ron had worked the entire day on Sunday, and to back up his statements, the detectives checked his work log, which clearly showed the start and end times of his shift. Despite this, they still obtained a search warrant for Ron's tow truck, hoping to find any evidence that Carlie had been inside. Fortunately, the search yielded no results. The detectives had no option but to clear Ron Choquet from their list of suspects. As time passed, the investigation stalled. No one knew where Carlie was or what had happened to her, and the authorities had neither evidence nor credible suspects to pursue. The detectives had no choice but to bring Carlie's mother, Susan, into the police station, hoping she might help identify the unknown man seen in the footage. Unfortunately, Susan couldn't recognize him. She fought to maintain her composure, shaking with a mix of desperation and fear for her daughter's safety, fully aware that the man in the video had likely taken Carlie by force and could have done something terrible to her. The police poured all their efforts into finding the girl as quickly as possible. They released the video footage to the media in hopes of generating leads and gathering information from anyone who might recognize the man in the clips.
The search for a missing Florida girl has kicked into high gear. Since her disappearance on Sunday, the urgency to find 11-year-old Carlie Brucia has mounted with each passing second.
The case gained widespread attention, dominating news broadcasts and making Carlie's disappearance a hot topic.
Finding her could spin on two things: an activated Amber Alert and the watchful eye of a surveillance camera.
The detectives worked around the clock, sacrificing sleep and rest, while the entire department remained vigilant, determined not to close their eyes. Despite their relentless efforts, they had just one piece of evidence: the video recording, which they reviewed repeatedly, looking for any detail they might have overlooked. They were able to identify that the suspect had a name badge above his chest pocket. By zooming in on the footage, they discerned the outlines of at least 3 letters, but the image was too blurry to make out the details clearly. The police department received countless calls each day, and after reviewing these tips, the officers pinpointed around 700 leads that were worth investigating further. Any one of these calls had the potential to change the course of the case. With each passing minute, the tension mounted, and all they could do was hope that the girl was still alive. Finally, early on the morning of Tuesday, February 3rd, another call came into the hotline. The caller claimed to recognize the man in the video, stating that he was his business partner. He identified the individual as Joseph Smith, noting that he recognized him by his distinctive gait and the jumpsuit he usually wore at work. He also pointed out that the name on the badge read Joe. The detectives ran a check on the name in the criminal database and found that Joseph Smith was on probation. They learned that he owned a brown Lincoln, which led the investigators to scour all the available footage for any sight of this vehicle. However, despite their thorough search, they couldn't find a single car that matched Joseph Smith's description. While there were plenty of vehicles in the recording, none belonged to him. The detectives spotted another vehicle that piqued their interest, a white station wagon. It moved through the parking lot and made its way toward the exit onto Bee Ridge Road. Although the car's make and color didn't match Joseph Smith's vehicle, the detectives decided to track its movements. The car initially drove along the highway before slowing down and turning onto a side road near the car wash. Even if this vehicle wasn't linked to the suspect, could at least be a valuable witness. They needed to find both the car and its driver as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the detectives proceeded to visit the next primary suspect, heading to Joseph Smith's residence. The conversation went on for about 45 minutes. Joseph claimed he had spent the evening at home and hadn't gone anywhere, something his landlord, Mimi, could verify. The detectives showed him surveillance images that included Carlie and a white man. After looking at the photo, Joseph calmly said that while the man looked similar to him, it wasn't him. With Smith's consent, the detectives searched his room and discovered 2 neatly folded jumpsuits in his closet, both with his name, Joe, on them. Throughout the questioning, Joseph remained calm, cooperative with the investigation, and friendly as he answered their questions. Eventually, Mimi arrived and confirmed Joseph's alibi, stating he had been home from 3 p.m. until the end of the first half of the Super Bowl. She vividly remembered that during halftime, Joseph received a call from his wife, who asked to speak with him. As a result, Joseph Smith was removed from the list of suspects. However, investigators found equipment for storing and using illegal substances in his vehicle, which resulted in his arrest for violating parole. It had been 48 hours since Carlie's disappearance, but at last, the investigation began to make progress. On the evening of February 3rd, Jeff Pincus, Mimi's husband, came to the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. He wanted to clarify his wife's statements regarding their tenant's alibi. What made the situation even more intriguing was that he owned a white station wagon that closely resembled the car seen in the surveillance footage.
I don't know, so you got this whole Super Bowl thing mixed up with this whole ordeal.
Jeff stated that Mimi had mixed up the timing. She had been watching their grandson all evening and completely forgot when Joseph Smith had left.
Joe came out and said, hey, can I use your car? I said, well, just go and how are you going to be? He said, 15 minutes. So I said, all right, go ahead. What was you wearing at the time? His mechanic suit. Describe it to me. Great.
Jeff Pincus's testimony directly contradicted Smith's alibi. He claimed that he had given Joe the keys to his station wagon on Sunday at 3 p.m., but Joe didn't return them until Monday morning.
When I got up at 6:30, no car. 7:30, I'm ready to walk out the door. Who shows up? Joe. Where the hell did you get? What do you look like 7:30 Monday morning? Real clean. Like, you had a good night's sleep, or you real happy, or you just looked like you had a wonderful night.
Jeff recalled that when he got into his car, he immediately noticed something was wrong. The back seat was reclined, belongings were scattered everywhere, and Joe's behavior seemed strange to him. That morning, he had seen the news about the missing girl, including photos and video clips. Jeff quickly recognized the distinctive name badge, the gray uniform, and the haircut that were all identical to Smith's. Jeff Pincus's testimony completely changed the course of the investigation, placing Joe as the main and only suspect. While they couldn't confirm with 100% certainty that Joseph Smith was the man in the footage, all the evidence pointed to him. Investigators now had a serious suspect, but Carlie's whereabouts were still unknown. The evidence heavily implied his guilt, but the detectives hoped to get him to confess. Following protocol, they decided to interrogate Smith, who, as we know, was in custody for violating his parole.
We gotta sit down and we have to talk. In this room, it's about the truth. Okay? It's the most important thing that goes on in this room, is the truth. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Adam 12, TV.
I was already advised to talk to a lawyer.
Who advised you?
A friend of mine.
That means you and I can't talk.
Joseph Smith refused to answer any questions without a lawyer present and chose to remain silent. The only person he communicated with in jail was his brother, John. The following day, John contacted the police to reveal that Joseph had confessed everything to him. He stated that Joseph had put Carlie into a white station wagon, SA'd her, and then strangled her with a ligature. He left her body behind the church on Proctor Road, concealed among the trees and far away from any houses. Detectives, accompanied by forensic specialists, quickly went to the location John had provided and found the body. The investigation now had a clear understanding of what happened to Carlie. On Super Bowl Sunday, Joseph Smith decided to relax and borrowed a light yellow station wagon from his landlord. After taking a mix of illegal substances, he ended up on Bee Ridge Road. There, he turned toward a car wash near where Carlie was passing by and targeted her as his next victim. At first, he pulled into the parking lot of a nearby car wash, but realizing he couldn't get behind it from there, he returned to the main road and drove to a different spot where he turned onto a small dirt road adjacent to the car wash. He parked the car and approached Carlie, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her toward him. After locking her in the vehicle, he drove 3 miles away, where he unleashed his twisted fantasies. DNA evidence, along with her hair and fabric from the clothing, clearly linked Joseph Smith to the crime. Without the video footage, the case might have gone unresolved. Remarkably, the investigation took only 5 days. Joseph Smith faced charges of SA and first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death, but in July 2021, at the age of 55, he was found dead in his cell on death row in a Florida prison. The authorities did not reveal the cause of his death.